give you $500. You guys all split it up.
Thank you.
I gotta say this. Great things happen in Philadelphia. Let's go. Let's go, baby.
Oh, they like them at the Philly steak cheese joint. How about that? Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump out with some pretty big news. We're going to get to this. Welcome to the program. You saw him there in Philly getting the signature steak and cheese sandwich, right? You can't go to Philly without having one of those. And leaving a $500 tip. You saw him say, okay, $500, can you guys split it between you all? And he, of course, put his no tax on tip right there as he was signing the tip, one of his signature policy ideas. It is wonderful to have you here. It is a very big day. And Donald Trump has confirmed that he has chosen who the vice president will be at the top of the ticket with him, alongside him. And this is a really, really big deal, but perhaps not as big a deal as the folks in the media make of it. Donald Trump has tried to warn people before, you know what, don't get too carried away with this. It's really me, right? It's not the VP. And to a certain extent, that's true, right? The VP is there to complement the president of the United States. And of course, in the uneventful, rather eventful, but unfortunate situation where one might have to step in, should be capable, right? So you need somebody who's capable, but you need somebody who's going to kind of walk the walk, talk the talk, and not steal all the thunder, which is why, as he confirms that he has chosen one person in particular, I have a little bit of intel on who that might be. And I would just say that I got it right last time, too. Okay. I said it was going to be Pence. I knew it would be Pence because Pence checked off a few boxes, and those boxes aren't entirely different than what he needs checked right now. I mean, you think about the list itself, right? The list itself is huge. I mean, they've got quite a number of people, and hey, that's wonderful news, don't you think, for the GOP, that the GOP has so many people on the bench that it can consider and look at. So this is Time Magazine did a huge thing on all of the potential contenders. Doug Burgum is one. We've got Dr. Ben Carlson. We've got our friend from Florida there. We've got Marco Rubio. Byron Donalds, of course, from Florida. You get Tim Scott. You've got the woman from New York, Elise Stefanik, and J.D. Vance. I mean, those little faces are so small, but that's the lineup. You're going to fit them all on a screen. So Time Magazine did a sort of deep dive on each one of these people, and we don't have to bore you with all of them because I think that really when it comes down to it, by the way, we love Byron. When it comes down to it, I think you're probably looking at Doug Burgum. I think you're probably looking at the potential of Rubio. There's a lot of people that like Rubio. I think you're probably looking maybe sort of at Tim Scott. And I think J.D. Vance is very much in play. J.D. Vance, remember that. In fact, if you ask me, it's really come down to J.D. Vance and Doug Burgum. Now, this is an interesting poll. This is from Harvard-Harris. And it's looking at the over-under in terms of basically whether people would be more inclined to vote for Trump or less likely to vote for Trump. Now, this is fascinating to me that Tim Scott actually gets a +6. I mean, Ramaswamy comes out 0, maybe because he has some negatives. You know, big personality. A lot of people love him or hate him. Rubio certainly has his negatives, right? A lot of people see him as being sort of in step with the traditional GOP. Tulsi was a Democrat, right? So, you know, I think a lot of people are going to have a hard time getting over that. Poor Kristi Noem had the unfortunate book that came out with the incident about the puppy. So that's a hard one to overcome. She's also just said over the weekend that she has not been vetted to be VP. So she's admitted effectively that she's not in the running. And then you have Doug Burgum down 6, Elise Stefanik down 11. I'm surprised by Elise Stefanik that would actually result in -11. I think a lot of people probably don't know who she is. She kind of got her claim to fame because of what happened there with Claudine Gay at Harvard University. Elise effectively took her out. Another Harvard grad going after the Harvard president saying, hey, you know what? Let me push you on this. And Claudine had no good answers and eventually lost her job as head of Harvard University. But other than that, the public is not really familiar with Elise Stefanik. But you know who they are familiar with and who's not on that list? J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, who, by the way, commands a lot of respect in the Midwest. He's from Ohio. Trump's got Ohio. Believe me, Trump's got Ohio. No question there. I mean, I think the latest poll shows him up 18 or something. But it's a question of what happens in Wisconsin, what happens in Michigan, what happens in Pennsylvania. That's why he was in Philly over the weekend, right? You get it. He's trying to go to these places where he needs to make up some ground. And I think he's doing so pretty well thus far, because you have only to look at the latest polls. But before we get to that, the question becomes, really, who's it going to be? Well, my sources have their money on Governor Burgum. I'm going to have to learn to say that right? Like, nobody knows who he is. Everybody's like, wait, who's this guy? And J.D. Vance. We know J.D. We know J.D. very, very well. But who is Doug Burgum? Well, I'll tell you. He had the right answer when he was asked on CNN this weekend about how important the VP spot was. Let's go to him. Let me introduce you to the governor of one of the Dakotas.
But let me move on because, as I mentioned, you are one of Donald Trump's top contenders to be vice president. I've heard from sources that really they believe it's down to you and to Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio. Of course, the caveat, Trump could change his mind. But when you look at the ticket and we look at vice presidential selections in the past, you know, Joe Biden helped Barack Obama with foreign policy inexperience. Mike Pence helped Donald Trump with evangelicals. Kamala Harris, black voters, women voters for President Biden. What would you bring to a Trump ticket specifically?
Well, I think we have to just look at the fact that President Trump can win this race regardless of who his vice president is. He's got the luxury of not having to pick someone. And I think if we actually look in political history, the last time a vice presidential pick actually helped swing an election was when Kennedy picked Lyndon Johnson, and Lyndon Johnson helped Kennedy win that race. And with President Trump right now, where he is with Hispanics, with blacks, with people under age 30, and with independents, I mean, he's very strong across the board. So he can pick someone that he can focus on, like, hey, let's get someone get stuff done. Let's get someone who helps him govern. He doesn't have to make a choice like some of the other names that you cited, where maybe they needed a blend to actually get the electoral block.
But what would you bring to the ticket specifically if you're on it? Would it be your business experience? You know, you talked about governing. What is it specifically? Why should he pick you, basically?
Well, I think that's up to President Trump. President Trump understands the criteria that he wants. He's going to make that choice at the time he makes it. He's got a lot of great choices, and I think everybody, the whole country maybe knows my background, which is both success in business and success as in the executive branch as governing. But that's his choice on what criteria that he wants. And again, when we've got this big week and the big debate going this week, nobody's really thinking about the VP thing this week, and we should really be focusing on, you know, how is Joe Biden going to defend his record on an open border? I mean, we take a look at what's happening in our country with the, you know, migrant crime that's happening, whether it's teenage girls, whether it's mother of five, or whether it's young college-age women. We've got an issue with an open border, and Joe Biden needs to answer why he keeps insisting on having this open border policy.
Okay. So basically, he had the right answer on everything. I mean, Donald Trump, I know him. I can tell you this. I don't think he wants any friction, right? Like, he doesn't want to deal with someone who is going to steal the limelight. So I know a lot of you love Vivek, and Vivek is awesome. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, there's a plane that just flew into Cleveland, Ohio. That's making the rounds on Twitter as of just about 10 minutes ago. And I'm like, yeah, but you know who else lives in Ohio? JD Vance, Senator Vance lives in Ohio. So it's very well that he could have been there to see him, but he could have been there to see him to say, you know what, JD, I love you. I need you to work hard for me. Hey, maybe Treasury Secretary in your future or something, right? A cabinet position, but I'm going to go with Doug, governor of North Dakota. Because listen to those answers. I mean, that's exactly what he wants. Exactly what he wants. Somebody who's going to work hard, get the job done, has a background in business. So Doug Burgum, He actually does have a background in business. He went to Stanford, got his MBA. Then he worked at McKinsey. McKinsey, mega. It's like the Goldman Sachs of consulting. So bona fides there. Started a software company, sold the software company. Eventually, it went for like $1.1 billion to Microsoft. So this is somebody who's wealthy in his own right. That matters as well to Donald Trump. You know why? Because I think he's a little sick of people being beholden to the system. It's why J.D. Vance, also wealthy in his own right, is a contender, another business person. So you get two business people. I like it. Hey, I'm a business reporter who's covering politics through an economic sort of lens, right? Because I care about what's going on economically. I think it's the key, actually, frankly, to everything. And so I love seeing business people up there for it. It's why I would put both of these guys way ahead of Tim Scott or even Marco Rubio. Now, there's a lot of sort of GOP money that likes Marco Rubio, and certainly Marco can speak Spanish, so he's got that going for him. But I suspect Donald Trump wants somebody who will carry his water and fade a little bit into the background. And there is no one that's going to fade into the background better and just get deals done and be able to speak the language, if you would, with donors that Doug Berman's going to do. So anything can happen. And I think actually all of these picks are pretty amazing. But I suspect at this point in time, it's Doug Berman. Now, the question becomes, how's that going to sit with the base? So one of the things that he has going against him is that Fox News likes him, dare I say, and Rupert Murdoch likes him. Of course, Rupert liked J.D. Vance, too, so go figure. I think J.D. kind of is over in Fox's mind, so that's actually probably better for Trump with the base if he were to pick J.D. Doug Burgum is going to have to get over the stink, if you would, of being a Fox pick. I mean, I think someone from Neil Cavuto's team was just tweeting out that it's probably going to be Burgum, and they had, what's his name, the guy who used to be on Shark Tank. I guess he's still on Shark Tank, Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, on saying he's probably going to look. Unfortunately for Doug, I mean, that's baggage, right? You don't want the Murdochs necessarily liking you. That's political baggage nowadays. I'm not going to hold it against him, okay? Because we don't know him that well. But what we've seen, we like in that he understands the economy. He understands how to run a business. And kind of at the end of the day, the U.S. is a business. What do you think this is? I mean, that's why you get a CEO and you get a CFO and you get a CAO, right? I mean, we need a chief administrative officer. We need a chief financial officer. We need a chief executive officer. Let's get some real people in there with some real qualifications, not these career politicians that are completely beholden to whoever is going to write the fattest check. I'm looking at you, Nikki, right? I mean, you don't have a career outside of whoever is willing to write the check. And so I think that there's opportunity for people that are coming from the business world. And by the way, that's entirely what our founding fathers always wanted. Think about it. Remember to subscribe, everyone, subscribe to the channel, like it, share it, make a comment. It's really important right now. It's really important that we have this direct connection. Anyway, a lot going on today. I do want to share with you some of these poll numbers, which are totally amazing. Donald Trump, he might just win this thing. Really and truly, guys. I mean, this is amazing. These poll numbers keep coming in, one after another, showing how much he's up. This is according to Axios. Look at this. So this is an interesting poll because it shows you that actually the Democrats are doing okay. By the way, we have to be concerned about this because we don't want to lose the Senate. You don't want to lose the House, right? You want Donald Trump to go in and have the wind at his back, so to speak, which means you got to get the House, you got to get the Senate. So this is not necessarily a good thing, but it shows you how bad a candidate Joe Biden is because the Democrats are actually up when you look at each of these individual races on the Senate level, right? In Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And then when you look at the presidential race, what do you see? Donald Trump up by 4.5% there in Arizona over Joe Biden, and then up 0.4%. That's so interesting in Michigan. Nevada up 7 points. Wow. Pennsylvania up 2.5 and barely, well, tied in Wisconsin. So this is fast. These are big time battleground states, ladies and gentlemen. No one thought that Donald Trump was going to win these back in 2020. Nobody would have thought that. And yet here we are. Today, in this moment, I want to go to a deep dive on some of these polls. We can look at, for example, Emerson College's polls, which show us what's going on there in the Midwest and in these battleground states. Arizona, Trump up 4. Georgia, Trump up 4. Nevada, Trump up 3. Wisconsin, Trump up 3. Again, all according to the very latest polling coming out of Emerson College just last week. Pennsylvania, Trump up 2. Michigan, Trump up 1. Minnesota, tied. Wow. Just to give you some context around this, okay? It's early in the game. And hey, anything can happen in politics. We know that, right? Because early in the game, around this very time in the 2016 cycle, you want to know where Donald Trump was vis-a-vis Hillary Clinton? 38.9% to 44.8%. And then what do you know? He just kept rising and rising and rising and rising. Now, one of the reasons for that, and one of the reasons why we're not even seeing stronger polling coming out of the Midwest, is because Donald Trump doesn't poll so well. Surprise, surprise, right? Earth-shattering news. He doesn't poll that well because, well, it's Trump. And people are actually afraid to admit they're voting for Trump. It's this touchy thing. I mean, when Biden tells you he's so evil, and everybody on Morning Joe and CNN, I can't believe he's doing this debate on CNN. We're going to talk about that too. Everyone out there is, oh, it's evil. MAGA is bad. They're writing off half the country. So if you admit that, oh, maybe you are actually somebody who voted for Trump in the past or are going to vote for him now, then you're part of the problem, right? You're the bad individual. You are the evil person that is supporting MAGA. And so you're naturally afraid to say it. I mean, I see it over and over and over again. People are afraid to admit, I'm going to vote for Trump. I get it all the time. People come up to me and it's like, they don't, oh, Trish, I love your show. I listen to your show every day. I watch your show every day. I love it. And they're always like, and I'm voting for Trump. But they're afraid to say it. Granted, I live in the Northeast and, you know, it is what it is here. I know Drew has a different experience living in Florida where you can get away with a little bit more. But I'm telling you, the fact that people feel ashamed, that in and of itself is kind of a problem, right? But to the benefit of Trump, it shows that these polls are probably not fully accurate. So going back to them, Drew, if we can look at Emerson College again, I mean, if you look at him up so significantly in so many of these states, Arizona up 4, Georgia up 4, Nevada up 3, Wisconsin up 3. I mean, think about that. So if it is not totally correct, and guess what? He could be even higher in Pennsylvania. He could be even higher in Michigan. He could be higher in Minnesota. Really and truly, guys, because nobody's willing to say what they really think. Meanwhile, you don't have a ton of enthusiasm, right? There's not a lot of enthusiasm for the guy who has driven up prices to levels that we haven't really ever seen. I mean, you've got inflation skyrocketing. To get any kind of similar growth in inflation, you're going to go all the way back to the Jimmy Carter years. So we got problems, right? When it comes to inflation, it's out of control. And so you don't have a lot of enthusiasm for the candidate, for the Democrat candidate, because people naturally blame him. They blame, as they should, Joe Biden. I mean, I'd say that some blame could go around. Jerome Powell, I'm looking at you. But as a result of this, his base is not coming out for him, whether it be blacks or whether it be women. The New York Times had a big article on this about how women are just not coming out as anticipated. Here's the headline: Biden's lead with women is smaller than Trump's with men. A warning for Democrats. His current standing among women is the weakest lead a Democrat has had since 2004. A key factor in how tight this race is. You know why? Because women are not stupid. Women are the ones that are effectively the CFOs of their family. They're the ones at the grocery counter having to pay for a 30% increase in grocery costs. They know what it takes to run a household. They know when you got to buy new sneakers every few months for the kids, and they know how much more everything costs, and they know that they don't have as much money coming in because jobs are not correspondingly increasing wages enough to keep up with all this inflation. It's a huge problem. I mean, it's actually one of the reasons why, quick shout out for one of our wonderful, wonderful sponsors here on the program, American Heart for Gold, why I say, you know what, you got to diversify your portfolio. You got to think about what actually is going to help you preserve the value of your dollars in the future. One way to help preserve that is diversifying into gold. I like gold a lot. And by the way, I've been completely right on this. I'm not, I'm not going to sit here and say like, I'm 1,000% right all the time, although I usually am. Anyway, just saying, I usually am. Anyway, one of the things that I have been very right about is gold. And look, I think it's fairly priced right now, but I think that basically what you're looking at is concern for the future, because none of this spending is going to change overnight. I mean, 34 trillion and counting. And you're going to find that just paying off the interest on the debt is going to eat up a bigger and bigger chunk. So this is not a good scenario for the US, and it's just the reality of where we are. On top of that, you have countries all around the world saying, well, look what the US did to Russia. I don't really like that. I mean, they're not even technically at war with Russia, and yet they just basically wiped out Russia. Any kind of debt that they held got wiped out. They're not using rubles anymore. And so people are like, hey, okay. So all around the world, you have countries increasingly looking to diversify their own holdings into gold. Central banks are buying gold. So all of this is contributing to the increase in gold prices. I would say take a look at this. Silver is actually on the upswing as well. And if you text my name, Trish, Trish, to 65532, again, text Trish to 65532, you can get up to $15,000 in free silver. This is a special offer for viewers of the Trish Regan Show only. Call 1-844-495-1115. Again, up to $15,000 in free silver. And guess what else? You can also go to Trish Loves Gold. You can't forget that. TrishLovesGold.com. I'm going to put the URL as well in the show notes for you. So TrishLovesGold.com, or text Trish to 65532. But it's quite obvious, what, this inflation is here and it's not going away. So we have a real problem. I think any way you slice it, Donald Trump really stands to win this election. I mean, unless something really terrible happens, like, I don't know, there's just a disaster of a debate. I look at this debate that's happening on Thursday at CNN, and I am quite hesitant. I worry that CNN is CNN. And it didn't get that moniker Communist News Network for nothing, right? They don't like Donald Trump over at CNN. And the guy who's going to be moderating this whole thing with his sidekick, Dana Bash, his name is Jake Tapper, and he has said over the years how much he really doesn't like Donald Trump. In fact, guys, do you remember just several months ago, maybe a little longer than that ago, they decided to do a town hall on CNN with Donald Trump. And the anchors went bonkers. It was like a complete mutiny at CNN. They wound up getting their boss fired because how dare the boss suggest a town hall with Donald Trump? That pariah, that disgusting person that is Donald Trump. Oh my God, they couldn't believe it. And they drove this poor guy right out of town. He was actually trying to help them. I think they got the best ratings they've ever gotten. They've just been sinking like a brick ever since. So I need you to remember that. Because going into Thursday, I feel very strongly that this is a little bit of a setup. I mean, they're going to control the microphones, and that's going to come with baggage. And they're going to control the questions. I've moderated 2 debates myself. I know how this works. Unfortunately, you get a lot of people, a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and they're all looking at these questions over and over and over again. And what they want to do is trip up Donald Trump. And so Jake Tapper, with his very nasal, I'm sorry I pick on people's voices, but I guess it's my background in classical music, and I have a very sensitive ear. For whatever reason, every man that came out of ABC News, that they wound up on MSNBC and mostly on CNN, they all sound very Kermit-like, including poor Jake Tapper. Terrible, terrible voice. Anyway, I don't believe that Jake can really be neutral in any of this. I want you to hear him if you can stand to listen. I know it's nails on the chalkboard, but here he is with Anderson Cooper.
And it was an interesting night. Mr. Trump's first lie was told just seconds into the night with his false familiar claim that the 2020 election was, quote, a rigged election. And the falsehoods kept coming fast and furious about the January 6th insurrection, about the threat to Vice President Pence, about Pence's ability to overturn the election, about COVID, about the economy, and more. He called a black law enforcement officer a thug. He said people here in Washington, D.C. at Chinatown don't speak English. He attacked Caitlyn as a nasty woman because she was...
Can we just plug his nose? Someone needs to get him some voice lessons. Him and Ron DeSantis. Please, please, please. Anyway, we're going to have to listen to him on Thursday night. Well, you won't. I will. This is what I do for you. This is a labor of love. I'm not kidding. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like. Make sure you share. Make a comment. Join our chat. I see so many of you. Welcome back. Welcome back on this Monday. But yeah, Jake Tapper has... He has the job of trying to pretend like he's not biased, but he's very, very biased. And we've seen it over and over again. And the same with his sidekick. So you're going to have two very biased individuals in the seat. And then you get the network bias pouring in. Then, they get the former New York Times guy that's running their newsroom, for goodness sakes. And everybody has their book, so to speak, as we'd say in the market, right? Well, take a look at this. This is unbelievable to me. Today, moments ago, one of the press people for Donald Trump goes on CNN. You know what? Kudos to her. Kudos to her. She's actually trying to diversify and not just go on the conservative network. She's right out there on CNN. And she tries to make the point that I just did about Jake being a bit biased, and we should understand that going into Thursday night. Whoa! The anchor won't even, the poor anchor who looks like she just rolled out of bed, won't even let her talk. Take a peek.
So he's basically saying there, well, will I let Joe Biden win? It does seem as though many Republicans have set the bar very low in terms of arguing that Joe Biden is basically senile. Now you have people like Doug Burgum coming out and saying, well, President Biden's very accomplished, trying to set expectations in a different place. What do you expect from Joe Biden?
Well, first of all, it would take someone 5 minutes to Google Jake Tapper, Donald Trump, to see that Jake Tapper has consistently frequently likened President Trump to Adolf Hitler.
Ma'am, I'm going to stop this interview if you continue to attack my colleagues. I would like to talk about Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who you work for.
Yes.
If you are here to speak on his behalf, I am willing to have this conversation.
I am stating facts that your colleagues have stated in the past.
Okay,
now,
I'm sorry, guys. We're going to come back out to the panel. Caroline, thank you very much for your time. You are welcome to come back at any point. She is welcome to come back and speak about Donald Trump, and Donald Trump will have equal time to Joe Biden when they both join us now at later this week in Atlanta for this debate. Our thing.
I can't quite breathe because I'm so upset that someone dared to insult my colleague, Jake Tapper, the godly Jake Tapper, who can't get his voice out of his nose. Oh, my Lord. You know what, Caroline Levitt, again, kudos to you, girl, because, I'd have no interest in going on that show ever. These people they're not fair. Kudos to Trump. Listen, I wish in some ways he wasn't doing that, but I think he felt like he needed to, he had to. And so here he is, and he's going on the likes of CNN, where he is not going to get a fair shake because, yes, to Caroline's point, the anchors are incredibly biased. They've made it, I will say this in Fox's defense for one moment. I know you guys don't love Brett and Martha, but they serve a purpose, and they're actually not allowed to speak out as much as other people like a Hannity might speak out. They're actually really, really specific about that. They play a certain role, and the network requires that they try to live within the parameters of that. On CNN, they don't even try. They don't even it's like the same at MSNBC. They're all super lefty and make it clear how much they hate Trump over and over and over again. And then somehow now they're moderating the debate. I mean, he's a big guy. He's a smart guy. He'll probably be able to handle it fine. But what do you do when they turn off your mic? I mean, that's my concern. And they only open it for Biden. They said they're only going to give out 1 bottle of water. You guys are like, hey, I hope he checks that water. Bring your own water, Trump, right? That's kind of funny. And they're going to stand at a table, I guess. it'll be interesting to see. I think it's going to be one-sided. I think I'll be amazed if Biden can like pull it together. I do think that they're going to give him his favorite issues. And you saw what I just showed you about how women not being mobilized to come out and vote against Trump and for Biden because, you know, they're looking at their grocery bills. Well, they're trying to boil this down to one issue and one issue only. And they think that somehow they're going to be able to motivate women to come out if they focus on abortion. But I got news for them. Been there, done that. It's been kicked back to the states. You go focus on those governor races and anybody that's holding a state office, okay? Because that has nothing to do with the president at this point. Absolutely nothing. Roe v. Wade was kicked back to the states. So you're trying to relive history. It's really bizarre. I mean, that's your issue for the presidential race? I'm sorry, I don't think so. I mean, I go back to those polls from Axios and it makes sense to me now. Okay, so maybe you've got Democrats up in some of the local races, even the Senate races. But when it comes to the presidential race, everybody knows now, the president's going to have nothing to do with that. That's done, okay? Done. We've moved on. His other big issue that he wants to focus on apparently is the economy, which just cracks me up because I'm like, you know what? You are your own worst enemy, Joe Biden. You are your own worst enemy because Donald Trump can basically have you as a little snack for lunch on something like that. Just a little snack. You know, and yeah, I look at this. So I want to show you this clip from, it was actually played on Fox, one of the Biden-Harris campaign chair people trying to say somehow that not having an audience is better for the American people. Not having an audience? Oh, because they just don't want Biden to get booed. I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want Biden to get distracted. You know how he keeps looking off into the big crowd, all dazed and confused, has no clue what's going on because there's so many people. That's what they're trying to avoid. Listen to this woman.
Not having an audience, not having distractions, not having to worry about COVID. I think all of those things are better for the American people, and Joe Biden's going to have a great debate.
Yeah. Better for the American people. I'm sorry. You know what? It's over before it started. Because I don't think anybody believes that Donald Trump is going to get a fair debate. Because you got a couple anchors that have an enormous bias. An enormous bias. And they're part of the problem. They're part of the system and they're part of the problem. So we'll see. You know what? I'll keep an open mind. I'll watch it. I'll pick the best clips. And we'll talk about them on Friday. I promise. But I don't have high expectations for any of it, really. You know, policy is important. They need to talk about policy, but I just don't think that the anchors are sophisticated enough. They don't understand the economy. They don't understand things like border. Donald Trump, obviously, border's the number one, besides the economy, issue for him. We heard him in Philadelphia, again, over the weekend at one of the rallies there, and he really made a point of this. He's saying, you know what? I am going to treat the border as my number one issue. They keep saying, oh, he's going to be a dictator. He's going to be a dictator. He's like, no. I'm going to be a dictator for one day because I am going to shut the border. By the way, what did Biden just do after saying he couldn't do it and wouldn't do it? He just said he was going to shut the border on days when it got too heavy. Talking about wanting to have your cake and eat it too. Let's go to Philadelphia where over the weekend, Donald Trump made one thing very clear.
This is not a normal situation. This is not, oh, isn't it wonderful, these wonderful people. These people are drug dealers, gang members, killers in so many different ways. No. And we probably have 18 million. We'll have 20 million by the time we get this guy out of there. But we got to get him out fast. We got even bigger problems. We got to get him out fast. The biggest problem is what he's saying to Russia, China, to Kim Jong-un, North Korea. What he's saying to these countries, they're laughing at us. They can't believe this has happened to America. On day one, I will seal the border, stop the invasion, and send Joe Biden's illegal aliens the hell back home. Day after day, week after week, Joe Biden is releasing illegal criminals into our communities to rape, pillage, plunder, and to kill.
So they want you to believe that that is extremely wrong, all that he said. You know, I pulled some files, and this is actually it was devastating to me to see how accurate it was in that. I remember this was back in 2016 because he kept saying this, and you know, I'm a journalist, I'm a reporter, and I like to have data to back up anything that we're talking about. And so I had asked my research team, and we had something at Fox called the Brain Room. So I had the Brain Room like run a bunch of stats, and my team there run a bunch of stats. And basically what they presented me with was a list of all the people that were getting booked on various crimes. And unfortunately, it gelled with what he's talking about. And I didn't actually fully anticipate that it would. I had a very open mind about this, and I can understand how things get sort of, you know, taken away and there's rhetoric, but, you know, typically also people are coming in and these are poor people in poor areas. And what do you have in a lot of the poorer parts of America? You do have more crime, and there's nothing sort of racially whatever about that. I'm just saying in poor communities, it generally goes that you do have more crime. And so perhaps a greater number of these arrests are coming from people that are here illegally, that are in these particular pockets. But it gets back to, you know, if you're somebody who is here legally, and what if you came and you did everything the right way, and all of a sudden now you're compromised, your neighborhood is compromised, your job might be compromised because you have 20 illegals that are willing to do the same job that you were going to do. I mean, all of this, I think, takes its toll on communities. And then you factor in the economic consequences of the hospital system being drained, of the school system being drained. And the reality is we can't handle it, all right? Like we are not. I'm going to quote Dianne Feinstein from 1980 something. The quote, direct quote was, "We are not the welfare system for Mexico." Democrat Senator from California. Imagine that. We are not the welfare system from Mexico. So, ladies and gentlemen, guess what? Newsflash. We are not the welfare system for Mexico. And even though they have a brand new president who wants to blame it all on us and believes in, quote, porous borders, well, guess what? We actually do have some ammunition. They better start buying their gold in Mexico because we don't have to play their game. We can tariff the heck out of everything. You want to build your cars in Mexico and they get massively tariffed. And guess what that means? Claudia Sheinbaum. If you don't patrol your border, there are consequences, and we can put them in 1, 2, 3. Rapido. Okay? It's going to happen. But you need to get the right person there in charge in order to make sure. You know who's trying to help make sure that not only you have a conservative in the White House, but also conservatives in the Senate and in the House, our good friends over at Americans for Prosperity, AFP, americansforprosperity.org, another wonderful sponsor. I'm so proud to team up with these guys. We actually have one of their folks coming on this week. We've been talking about big issues like Bidenomics. Bidenomics.com, by the way, is them, and you'll actually get the truth about Bidenomics because they bought that URL first. So Bidenomics.com, I encourage you to go look at that. AFP, americansforprosperity.org. They've got a great plan for immigration. They've got a great plan for healthcare. They got a great plan for the economy. There's important stuff that we need to focus on right now. We really, really, really do, because a lot's at stake. You know, so much is at stake that it's kind of scary. I saw some video coming in over the weekend of this event up in the Bronx, and I would actually dare to say that the people hosting it, I'm talking AOC and Jamal Bowman, he's the fire alarm guy, 2 representatives in Congress that actually should scare you with their behavior. I mean, I'm looking at AOC like, is she okay? What's wrong? The 2 of them made this little video. I mean, it's like total cringe, this first little thing. It gets worse and worse and worse. But this first little one-off that they did, this cell phone video where they're trying to encourage people to get out to vote. I mean, he's up a creek without a paddle, because not even Hillary Clinton is for this guy right now. She just endorsed his competitor. So he calls in the big guns. He's got AOC there trying to hang out with him in the Bronx, and they're out there making these little cell phone videos that will just that will cause you to cringe. I promise. Watch.
What's up, everybody. We are just a few days out till the election day, our primary election on Tuesday, June 25th. But the good news is that the polls are open right now, and we are here for our brother, Jamal Bowman. We want to turn out the vote. I don't care if you live in New York 16 and are turning out to vote for him. I don't care if you live outside New York 16. We are texting our friends. We are turning out. We are calling our friends in Tuckahoe, in White Plains, in New Rochelle, in Yonkers, and telling them to vote for Jamal Bowman.
Ceasefire now, y'all. That's what we're doing.
Right.
Ceasefire now. Let's get it
That's
popping.
Right.
The polls are open today. The polls are open tomorrow. Make sure you get out to vote. Election day is Tuesday. Let's go. We need record turnout all across the district, especially in Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, Co-op City, and Edenwald. Let's get it popping. Let's change the world. It's the many versus the money. We're going to win.
Right.
Let's go, baby.
We're going to win. We're going to take on AIPAC, and we're going to kick some Wall Street ass. So let's go.
Stop the bombs.
Oh, unbelievable. All right. And it gets worse. Like, they've got this rally going on. And by the way, they're not exactly, how shall we say, fans of Israel. That's putting it extremely delicately. But what's crazy to me is that you actually had protesters there saying they're not hard enough on Israel. So you had that whole component going on. And then you had AOC up there on stage screaming wildly and dancing to this music. I mean, it was out of control. You're like, is she okay? Really? Is she okay? Let's watch this. And I don't know. I'm going to ask you, what do you think? Is AOC, the former bartender, we don't hold that against her, but, now turned representative, seems to have, kind of gone off the reservation a bit. So she's screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. And I can't quite figure it out. I mean, I do think that part of this is that she's worried because Donald Trump was just up in the Bronx. Remember how she flipped out? Because he had all those rappers there. And by the way, he didn't need to sound like that. What's that about, girl? What is that about? It's very interesting, too, because that population was not as diverse as you would have thought. Donald Trump actually had a very diverse crowd. When you look at that crowd, it's not what you would think for the Bronx. Not at all. So she makes a total fool of herself. I mean, the cringeworthy moment with Jamal on the cell phone. And then that, whatever that was, has me wondering if this woman is actually okay. I don't think she is. But it's concerning that there's so much anger, so much frustration, and seemingly a kind of hate. The congressman who is up a creek without a paddle because Hillary Clinton decided to endorse his competitor because he's just, I don't know, he's gotten so far out there that even the most left of the left is not going to vote for him now. He's really freaking out. You can see and feel the fear in his voice and in his body and in his body language. Do you know we actually had to clean this clip up to show you because we didn't want the F-bombs in there? He had all this horrible language and fury and anger. And I'm just telling you, oh my gosh, if this was ever Donald Trump that did anything like this, my goodness, everybody would flip out. But somehow it's tolerated and seen as okay when it comes from Jamal Bowman. Despicable. Watch.
We're gonna show them who the we are. We're gonna show them who the we are! Bowman! Bowman! Listen! not going to stand silent while U.S. tax dollars kills babies.
So he's bad news, all right? And he really actually belongs in jail. And I'm going to tell you why he belongs in jail, and that's because he actually, this is, I mean, you want to talk gross. He stopped a budget vote from happening. He stopped the vote from happening, and then, in order to cover it up, pulls the fire alarm, and then takes the signs down that said, "Don't pull the fire alarm." And the whole thing's caught on videotape. How is he even running for office? I mean, they work themselves up like nobody's business over anything and everything with Donald Trump. And here they've got a perfect example of a guy interrupting a federal procedure, a vote for the budget. What, so he's going to make sure that, you know, the government doesn't operate because he doesn't like the way the vote is going to turn out? What a schmuck. A total schmuck. And there he is with his ceasefire now nonsense there in the Bronx. He's going to get beaten. And you know what? The squad is going up. Poof, done, over. Because this has gone too far, ladies and gentlemen. Way too far. You got stupid people in big jobs. And that's wrong. That is not what the founding fathers intended. We didn't need bureaucrats and academics and stupid people. Jamal is neither an academic, but he is a bureaucrat, and he is a stupid person. And then I can think of somebody else who is a bureaucrat and an academic. I doubt she's stupid, but boy, oh boy, she's surrounded herself with some stupid people, including the President of the United States of America, who seems to think that Donald Trump drove inflation 9.4%, when in fact, inflation was hovering around 1%. That's what Donald Trump handed off to Joe Biden. Guess what Joe did? He took it and ran with it. And he allowed so much spending. It is crazy. I was looking at spending as a percentage of GDP rate recently, and I'm telling you guys, it's all out of whack. It's like 1.5 times what we've ever spent. Like, it's more than we spent during the World War II times. And yet this is what we're doing because, well, Joe Biden wants to buy more votes, including all those kids that don't care 2 bits about him. He thinks he can buy their vote by just paying off their college education. Then he's got Chuck Schumer, who put through all of these stimulus packages. He himself handed out a 3rd stimulus check, and then you had the Federal Reserve, courtesy of Jerome Powell, that could not stop printing. So this was a mess. And you know what? Joe Biden is responsible. Under his watch, we had 9.4% inflation. It went from 1 and change to 9.4, okay? And then guess what? When it goes to 6% the next month, it's not like it came down. No, it's 9.4%, and then on top, another 6%, and then on top, another 4% and 3%, and you get the picture, right? Because nobody in Washington, D.C. gets the picture. Certainly not the President of the United States. This is brilliant. So, Janet Yellen, former Treasury Secretary, current form. We hope she's going to be the former Treasury Secretary, current Treasury Secretary, former head of the Federal Reserve, first female Fed chief, first female Treasury Secretary. Not bad, eh? She went on Fox with my former colleague Neil Cavuto, and he asked a good question, which is like, what do you do? What do you do? You're an economist. You know better. You've seen the numbers. You know who is responsible for 9.4%. What do you do when Joe tries to tell you that it wasn't him? This is kind of funny. She just embarrassed herself and her boss. But, you know, apparently truth doesn't matter to these people. Here we go. Watch.
That I wonder if you could weigh in, Secretary, on Joe Biden constantly saying, and I don't believe he's ever corrected it, ma'am, that inflation was 9% when he assumed office. And I've talked about this with other economic advisors of the White House, and they find ways to say, well, it was getting there, and that's what he's referring to. But he keeps saying it was 9% when he took office. You're the top money person in the White House, and you know that was not the case. Have you ever tried to pull him aside and say, Mr. President, just so you know, inflation was not that high when you took office?
Well, look, the pandemic had hit the economy, hit America and the world with full force. at the time that President Biden assumed office. And
which is why it was so low, right? Which is why it was so low when he took office. So I know that factors behind that and what was going on, and you're quite right to point that out. But he doesn't. He doesn't say that.
Well, inflation hit 9% at its peak.
16 months after he took office.
That was due to inflation was lower before the pandemic. That's absolutely true. And into the pandemic, a year or so, inflation began to pick up because of supply bottlenecks, and later Russia's invasion of Ukraine led to spikes in food and oil prices. It briefly hit 9% and has come down. It's 2/3 down from that peak. And all throughout, we've enjoyed strong economic growth, a robust recovery from the pandemic.
So the trend is your friend, and there are differences of opinion on how what he refers to when he goes 9% when he took office. You're right. 16 months later, it did get that high, but that was under your.
I mean, I'm embarrassed for her. Really, I am. I'm embarrassed for her. And I feel for Neil, and he did the right thing pointing that out. Like, why does nobody ask these questions? Really? I mean, she goes on CNN, she goes on CNBC, everybody gives her a pass. It's like, no, the president's lying on inflation. And you sit there and say, fine? And then she couldn't admit it. Did you see that? I mean, wow. This is the woman who sat there with a straight face and told us, transitory, transitory, transitory. I think inflation is just transitory. And I have no doubt that behind the scenes, she's like, hey, Jerome, hey, Jerry, keep it going, keep it going. We got to keep printing. We got to keep printing. It's what the boss wants. It's what the big guy wants. And if the big guy had 2 brain cells, he would actually understand and have known that, no, you don't want that, Joe. You know why you don't want that? Because you're going to get mass inflation. And if you get mass inflation, that is a sure ticket not to getting yourself elected again. Okay, so let me just speak really objectively for a second. I mean, I'm the one who called out the second stimulus from Trump because I knew it would result in inflation. So all politics aside, you want to win, you don't put a bunch of inflation on the backs of everyday Americans, which means you know that you got a conflict heating up with Russia. And believe me, they knew. I think that they should have done a heck of a lot more from a diplomatic standpoint to stop that one, but they didn't. So they knew that was coming. And yet simultaneously, you're shutting down energy markets left and right, telling everybody they got to go buy an EV. Come on. You know that that's going to cause inflation. Duh. But it's like they're either not smart or it's intentional. Take your pick. Take your pick. Neither one is very good. You know, it's because of this. It's because of this mass inflation and this sort of blatant political spin that they're putting out there. It's because of that I started 76 Research, 76research.com, with my colleague and dear, dear friend, Rob Horton. Rob is brilliant, and he's an amazing stock picker, and he's done this for over 20 years. I'm not too bad myself, right? And I see a lot of macro stuff. And so being able to combine macro sensibility with really just in the trenches stock analysis was what I was looking for in terms of being able to offer you guys something. Because all the time people say, well, what do I buy? What do I invest in? I get that all the time. And I'm going to tell you something. Whatever you do, make sure you do invest, okay? Make sure you're investing. People say, oh, I don't have the money. Find it, okay? I mean that, whether it's just $10 a week. You got it somewhere, right? Skip the lattes or the Dunkin' Donuts or whatever you have to, because inflation is here. The train has left the station, and you're not going to be able to count on Uncle Joe or Uncle Sam, right? So you've got to actually do something for yourself. And I can't stress that enough. And look, you know, things go up and down and all of that, but Rob and I pick good companies. And if you are invested in a good, smart way, that is something that will pay off over time. And so I really want you to do it. It's why I created this. I mean, I certainly don't need to. It's you know, I believe in what I'm doing, and I believe in you guys, and I want you to have a solution. So we're running a 4th of July special. You can actually get the 76 report for $1 a month right now, because that's how strongly I feel about making sure you guys get access to this. 76report.com. There is nothing like it out there. And I know that because I've worked with financial research companies before on the consumer side. And it's all dumbed down, and it's not very good research. I'll just tell you. I mean, it's just not. It's not like this. And I've worked on the Wall Street side, so I know what the Wall Street research looks like. And well, it's not dumbed down. In fact, they try to talk in some kind of code, while simultaneously, the problem with Wall Street is that they have all their own biases that are in-house biases. Oh, we're invested in this IPO, therefore we need to push this, that, and the other. This has none of that. So this is just straight from us to you. It's authentic. It's real. We stand by every bit of it. It's $1 a month. Do that for yourself. Go to 76report.com. For an additional $23, you can get the model portfolio. I'd recommend you do that too. 10 to 15 stocks. Listen, guys, you know what? Time is running out in the sense that these guys are going to keep printing. And they're going to keep doing stupid things. And I don't care who gets in office. You know what? I love Trump, but he loves low rates. And so he's going to be all about, can we keep those rates low? And you're going to have, if that's the case, you're going to wind up in a situation where we're going to continue spending. Every single one of these politicians, they want to spend because it's the easiest way to deal with things in the here and now. I mean, I shouldn't say that about Trump. In fairness, I know how much he hates inflation. And I know that he wants to solve this. He does like cheap money, and what real estate guy doesn't? But at some point, you got to either be really smart with the cheap money or figure out a way to get this down. And we need to figure that out. But in the meantime, do what you can for yourself. Go to 76research.com or 76report.com. Type in this word, dollar, 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 because that's all you're going to have to spend, $1 a month. That's the introductory rate for a couple of months, I think. Anyway, go check it out, everyone. It's well worth it. There's an investor that has gotten a lot of press, a lot of acclaim. Her name is Cathie Wood. And she's kind of run into some things lately because she was a tech investor and she kind of missed out on NVIDIA. And that's kind of like one that you don't really want to miss out on, right? If you get a tech fund, you kind of want the semiconductors. I actually recommended semiconductors about 2.5 years ago. I did a piece actually, and NVIDIA was one of the companies I cited as one of the potential beneficiaries. And boy, was I right on that one, right? So anyway, Cathie Wood, she's a very, very famous investor. She sat down and was asked this question. I thought it was important because if you listen to her now, I think a lot of people would have thought that she was a lib, right? Because, she's on CNBC all the time and she's in that Wall Street crowd and this, that, and the other. And she's, kind of a darling, the media darling. And yet when she was asked, who is she going to vote for? She told us, and then she had to qualify it. This was really interesting to me. I want to play this clip for you. The podcaster said to her, or the host of this event said, Trump or Biden? Look at her response.
Trump or Biden?
The word is, so as I've said to my children, so I have 2 girls and a boy, and they're split on this. As I've said to them, look, I am going to vote for the person who's going to do the best job for our economy. I am a voter when it comes to economics. And on that basis, Trump. I mean, So Art Laffer describes the first 3 years of the Trump presidency as the best in U.S. economic history. Not the last one because of COVID, and I would agree.
Wow.
And I went through Reaganomics too.
I love that she mentioned Art. He's a really good friend of mine. And Art's brilliant. And we, as a nation, have a lot to thank Art for. Actually, Trump gave him a huge award, the Medal of Freedom Award, because Art Laffer is the guy responsible. If you study economics, you learn about the Laffer curve. It's basically when, you tax so much that you actually wind up suppressing the economy because people are like, well, why should I bother going to work? I'm just going to have to pay more taxes. And so Art drew this out as a little curve on a napkin for Ronald Reagan years ago. And as a result of that, Reagan was like, you know what, you're right. I mean, he kind of believed that anyway. And he presented the Laffer curve to America and said, we're going to cut taxes. And he brought taxes down, and we have him to thank for the economic success that followed. I mean, we were coming out of Jimmy Carter in the 70s, right? So what can we do now? The answer is not to raise taxes, which is exactly what Joe Biden wants to do. The answer is to give more back to you, the people. Put the money in the hands of the people that are earning it in the first place. Right? I mean, you're going to tax and tax and tax. I mean, it's partly, you know, in a small way why Trump is saying, hey, for this tax on tips. When I was younger, you know, nobody got taxed on their tips. Wait staff don't even make any money as it is. You're going to tax them on their tips, which is basically just a tip. He was in Philadelphia this weekend. I played this at the top of the show, but I want to remind you of it. Philadelphia over the weekend gave out $500 in tips. And what did he write? And he's telling everybody to write this on your check. No tax on tips. Drew, can we go to clip 1?
I'm going to give you $500. You guys all split it up.
Thank you.
I say this. Great things happen in Philadelphia. Let's go. Let's go, baby.
You know what? It is the economy, stupid. It really is. And Cathie Wood gets it. Big contribution just came in from the head of the Mellon family. I mean, you're talking old money, right? Mellon family, I think it was $50 million that he just gave to Donald Trump and $25 million to RFK. He really doesn't like Biden. I mean, Mike Bloomberg's out there, $19 million that he's giving to Joe Biden. But I think right now, the column is actually in Trump's favor. He's earning more money from all of the everyday folks out there in America that are donating, and also a lot of the elites too, because I think the handwriting's on the wall. Nobody wants to wind up in some kind of world war. Nobody wants our border compromised, and nobody wants our economy going straight down the drain, which is exactly where it's going. I mean, I don't know. Joe Biden seems to care about Ukraine when he needs to care about Ukraine. Like, remember back when he flew all the way over and made sure that they fired the guy who was in charge of investigating the company that his son worked for to the tune of $83,000 a month? Yeah, that's when he cares about it. Or, you know, how about all these energy deals that his son was involved in the likes of China, Ukraine, Romania, and like old-fashioned energy. This is not the green stuff, okay? So somehow it's okay. It's okay. We can champion energy for everybody else, but we have to be involved in only green, only green. You know what? I don't have a problem with green. Just give it all to me, okay? Because I want to be energy self-sufficient. Thank you very much. We were. And it's been eroded. And it's been taken away from us under this president who is not cut out for the job. Policy-wise, I haven't even talked about his age. You know what he needs? He needs a little balance of nature. Thank you very much. Another one of our great sponsors right here on the show, balanceofnature.com. I encourage you guys to go there. 1-800-246-8751 is the number. The discount code you need to use, it's Trish, because I don't think I've ever seen, really and truly, as long as we've been working with them, I don't think I've seen such a huge discount. This is actually huge, and it's just a limited time. So go check them out today. And order it, balanceofnature.com. You're going to get, wow, okay, this is new. They just started this today. I didn't even know they were doing this. I assumed it was 35% off. It's 50% off. It's 50% off your first set as a preferred customer during this summer savings promotion. Wow. Okay, so use discount code Trish, my name, to get 50% off your first order. You can call 1-800-246-8751. You can order it on balanceofnature.com. Just use discount code Trish for 50% off. This is actually a pretty extraordinary offer. I didn't even realize it was 50% off. I'm reading this in live time, so I assumed it was 35. I take the fruits and veggies, the supplements every day. I love them. You've heard me rave about them. I know that some of you guys actually already do take it. Leslie, you've told me you love this stuff. Anyway, I love it. And you know what? Maybe for Christmas, we can send one to Joe Biden. What do you think? If he's still president then, it's a terrible thing to say, right? Because I don't know. Sometimes I look at Kamala and I'm like, she's just hanging on. She's hanging on, saying, just be patient. Just be patient, girl. Maybe your day will come. I don't think he's going to win. I really don't. But you know what? He should take care of his health. We should all take care of our health. Drink your water, get your exercise, and take your balance of nature, ladies and gentlemen. Do that, do that, do that. You know who probably does take care of her health? That would be this amazing, amazing, amazing player, Caitlin Clark. You know, I never used to watch basketball before, full disclosure. And now I'm like, wait, what did she do? What's going on? I'm really into it. You know what? And that says a lot. That says a lot because, you know, I'm not really that into sports. Surprise, surprise, to begin with. And all of a sudden I'm like following this and I'm really interested in it. Caitlin Clark is like the bomb. I think she should be Rookie of the Year. There's some talk about maybe she won't be. We'll get to that in a second. But let me start off by first just saying, I don't think that the women's WNBA really had the paparazzi following them and noticing what they were wearing before. Not before this moment in time, not until Caitlin Clark showed up on the scene, and now all eyes are on basketball. Everybody's watching it. The crowds are bigger, and they even have the paparazzi checking out their outfits. And so here they are. Let's watch them as they were coming in for this big game in Chicago last night. There is Miss Caitlin Clark. And I don't know all the other players, but there's some interesting outfit choices here. Some of them are okay being on camera, some of them not so much. Like she seems fine with it. This one, not so much. And there's one that's really okay with it. Now she's got to get a good deal, right? Like, well, she should have a good sponsorship deal. This one's not so interested in it. Wow. Okay. So back to Caitlin Clark. Can we freeze frame, Drew? Maybe we can do that. Let's see. Because this outfit, it kind of just strikes me as all wrong. I'm sorry. It probably cost a fortune. It's made by Prada. You see the little Prada purse and she's got Prada shoes and I'm like, are we channeling the 80s there with the belt around the dress? I don't know. I mean, it's just not working for me. So Prada's apparently one of her sponsors. There's a big sponsorship deal going on. So that's probably why she's all dressed like that with the little purse. And I'm like, can't they have given you a backpack? I don't know. Am I being catty? I probably am. But you know what? Angela Reese, who's also up for Rookie of the Year after her amazing performance on the court last night, she was also photographed. And let me just say, she doesn't have a lot on, but the little that she has on, she's kind of working a little bit more, shall we say. Hey, Prada, can you get the stylist in to help Caitlin a little bit? You know, just maybe a little. So this is Angela Reese, and she reminds me so much of AOC in this picture for some reason. Anybody else getting that vibe? That's not a good vibe, by the way. That's not a good vibe. It's just sort of the let me flaunt it thing that she's got going on. So Caitlin Clark got a big deal with Prada. And in one case, I think her outfit was like half of her salary. I mean, like the outfit she was wearing one day was something like $17,000. And they don't make that much at the WNBA, although she's got great sponsorships. In fact, this is why everybody hates her, right? Because she did some $28 million deal, biggest deal ever with any rookie from none other than Nike. Anyway, look at this article. This came out in the spring, and it was talking about how Prada was recruiting Caitlin Clark. In fact, on draft night, they went right after her. They're like, we want you, girl. And then I think Women's Wear Daily did something on this too. And they talked about how she continues wearing these crop jackets and oversized pants and blah, 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 blah. All I'm going to say is, you know what, girl? You should have gone with Versace or Dolce & Gabbana. I mean, if you want an Italian designer. Because Prada, it's just not working. I'm sorry. I love her. Love her. But Prada needs to maybe just tailor some stuff for her. Okay, yeah, I am officially being catty. I get it. Rookie of the Year. I think she's got to get it. I mean, look at the amazing success she has had thus far. And yet all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Angela Reese has one good night. And now everybody's saying that Angela Reese should be Rookie of the Year. I mean, Caitlin Clark has had more points than anyone like ever. Like she's beaten the women and the men. She's got those 3-pointers, right? That make the game really, really exciting to see. And yet people don't want to give her Rookie of the Year. Kind of like they didn't want to give her the Olympics. And then they're fouling her all over the place. And it wasn't until the media made a big deal of this first one. Remember Kennedy Carter, who went after Caitlin Clark there, and we've got the video. Whoa! And she went down for the count, guys. That was not pretty. Not pretty. Not good. And yet, it happened again. And this is Angela Reese, and she just straight into the head. Straight into the head. So this was what they call a flagrant foul. Boom, hit her in the head. And a lot of people feel like she's kind of been singled out, unnecessarily so. And it gets down to race and all these other things that make basketball really uncomfortable and, not very sportsmanlike when it gets reduced. But you get the likes of Whoopi Goldberg weighing in and saying what she's saying, and her little cohort there also on the show saying what she's saying, and it becomes a very loaded situation very, very quickly. And that's not good. But this girl, let me tell you, she deserves it. She deserves Rookie of the Year. And yet this Angela Reese, who's now being talked about, she's the woman who says, excuse me, some people get special whistles. Do you see? I mean, like, she actually uses the word whistle here when she says that. You know where she's going. I know where she's going. She knows where she's going. And it's all deliberate. Watch.
For inside, I think we were playing really hard. I think we went up really strong a lot of times and we didn't get a lot of calls. And going back and looking at the film, I've seen a lot of calls that weren't made. I guess some people got a special whistle, but just being able to.
Oh, okay. So no, I really hope that she doesn't get Rookie of the Year. And I do think that the Caitlin Clark fans are going to be pretty darn mad, really, really mad if that happens. But that's what they're discussing, because you see the industry is terrified of the backlash of the players. Apparently, the woman who we got out of Russia carries a lot of weight to the point where you start asking yourself, did they actually deliberately pass on Caitlin Clark in the Olympics this year because they are fearful that she gets too much attention and therefore would be a distraction to Brittany Griner and others that want to get all of the attention? It's effectively what they said, right? They felt that, well, she wasn't experienced enough. But then they went on to talk about team dynamics and how the team dynamics wouldn't be very good. The head of the U.S. Los Angeles Olympic Committee for 2028, he's calling their BS. Look at this. He said leaving Caitlin Clark off 2024 U.S. team is a missed opportunity. This is Casey Wasserman. He's the president of the 2028 Los Angeles Olympic Committee Organizing Committee. He said over the weekend that this was a totally missed opportunity. Direct quote, I think it's a missed opportunity because she's clearly a generational talent at a time when the world was ready for it. Yes, totally ready for it. And he continues talking here saying the world was ready for it. And look, you know what? Quote, there have been incredible talents in the world. Shame on all of us. The world wasn't in a place to embrace that. Take Diana Taurasi, Brianna Stewart, or some of our Wasserman clients who are going to be on the team. They are dominant at a level that has never been seen before because the world wasn't ready to fill a building like Caitlin Clark did for whatever the Final Four. Now you have both those things, and so that's a powerful opportunity. And I think it just would have been an opportunity to elevate the women's team. But I understand the other side of it, which is an independent person and process, and it's hard to get in the way of telling the coach and the committee what to do. You see, in other words, there were no paparazzi waiting outside to see what Caitlin Clark or any other player for that matter was actually wearing until Caitlin Clark showed up on the scene. But because you people are too afraid of the Brittany Griners and the others being a little mad, a little perturbed, that somebody else is going to get all the attention, you can't actually do the right thing for the team. Oh, maybe they think this is the right thing for the team. That's actually part of their rationale here. The right thing for the team is to have people that gel with the team. Well, imagine that. It's like, I mean, can you imagine if you said that about a minority? Well, we don't really think that she's going to gel with the team because she doesn't have the right cultural background. She doesn't check the right boxes. Therefore, we're not going to put her on the team. Can you imagine the uproar? But somehow it works the other way just fine. It's totally fine. I don't think so. You know what? You got to tell your team to get with the program. You got to be a better coach. You got to rally around success because you know what? You can keep making that pie bigger. As long as you don't try and carve out your own little piece and not allow anybody else in, you're going to make it bigger for everyone. Caitlin Clark can make it bigger for everyone. Angela Reese, you think anybody had ever heard of this woman? Ever? You think anybody would have cared? No. People care. They know who she is because of Caitlin Clark. And no, it's not because she's the pretty white girl. It is because, they hold that against her. Just overcome that for some reason. It is because this girl's a dynamite player who happens to get 3-pointers over and over and over again. And so in the interest of a meritocracy and a capitalist culture, I will just say, go Caitlin Clark. Go Caitlin Clark. And I'll tell you, you WNBA people, you Olympic people, get with the program, okay? She's going to help you all if you just let her. Let me help you, by the way. Let me help you by, you need to go over right now to 76research.com or 76report.com. Type in code word dollar, 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 because it's only going to cost you $1. You need to do this. It is my gift to you. I'm so proud of what we've created. And I think it's so important right now to invest. I don't want to sound like Susie Orman, but compound interest, baby, right? You keep investing and it keeps growing for you. And I know there's going to be times when it's not always perfect, right? Things go down. What did I tell you during those dark days of 2020? In fact, I was furious. I'm looking at the market going, this is insane. CNN has scared everyone to death, including the stock market, which was tanking thousands of points. Well, that's the time when you go in. That's the time when you're brave. That's the time when you think clearly. And anything that Rob and I can do to help you think clearly in that process, by reading our research, I think it'll mean a lot. So go to 76 Report, subscribe for $1, guys. It's vital. It's important. I love your messages. I see a lot of you some of you actually have. You're not really fans of the WNBA. You're calling her the new Larry Bird. I like that, Schleppers. You know what? That's an interesting comparison. I was a Celtics girl, Celtics fan growing up, right outside Boston in New Hampshire. We didn't really have any sport teams. So little tiny state. So we were all in for the Red Sox. Sorry to all you Yankee fans. We were all in for the Celtics and of course the Patriots. Those were the days, right? But Larry Bird, I remember as a little kid always going, because my dad was a basketball player. So we'd go down and we'd go to the game and be a big, big deal at the Boston Garden. I really, really loved it. Devil D thinks I can't talk sports. I can't talk sports? You're probably right. I can't talk sports. But you know what? I'm suddenly into it. So hopefully my enthusiasm rubs off on you guys because, I don't really like injustice of any kind. Whether it's in politics, whether it's in economics, or whether it's in athletics. Remember that. Okay, go to 76report.com, get the dollar code, and I'll see you back here live tomorrow.